Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. I think we are going to be in a segment now which is going to prove very interesting to our audience when Dr. Allardyce talks to us about the surgical technique used as well as the postoperative care that he implores for individuals suffering from rotator cuff tears. Something that we talked about, though, off camera to get us into this part. What is it in your profession or professional opinion that gives you cause to say, okay, this is a person that needs surgery?
First thing is to make sure that, again, the history, the physical, and all the diagnostic tests make perfect sense to you, that indeed their pain is coming from a rotator cuff tear. But before you jump into surgery, and you have to understand that's a relationship that you're going to have with that patient, before you do it, you have to make certain that that patient has failed reasonable non-operative treatment for that particular tear. Now, there are some tears that are best treated without the therapy, just go straight into surgery. The massive rotator cuff tears that are acute, and they're usually pretty easy to diagnose. They come in with a big black and blue shoulder. They've had perfect function, and then instantaneously after the event, they have no function. But that's the minority of cases. The majority of cases are very small rotator cuff tears, and even though they're small, they can cause a lot of pain. And the treatment is to basically get rid of the pain, because once we get rid of the pain, we can restore motion, and then when we have a pain-free joint that has a full arc of motion, now we have full function. And that's what we're trying to achieve with all patients, whether it's medical management or surgical management, is full function. But before we go into the surgery, we have to...
What's causing the pain? I mean, I know that that's some kind of an esoteric question that we may not know the answer, but what is it that causes the pain that if you do surgery in the right circumstance, it relieves pain?
You know, that's the question that every patient should be asking when they come in with an MRI showing a rotator cuff tear. Doctor, what's causing this pain? A lot of times you don't know, but there are a lot of causes of shoulder pain, and only one is rotator cuff tear pain. So you have to be certain that it's nothing else. You can have a herniated disc in your neck, and why would you do a shoulder operation when their pain's coming from the neck? Or even shoulder arthritis. Arthritis is a condition today that, although it sounds very mundane, everyone knows what it is, there's still no cure for it, and there's nothing we can do to halt the progression or slow the progression of the disease. So if they have an arthritic shoulder, you can't help them with the rotator cuff repair. So there's a whole host of other problems that can cause shoulder pain, but you have to be certain it's rotator cuff pain. And we today still really don't know exactly what causes pain from rotator cuff tears. There is a bursitis that's associated with it, and there's also a bicipital tendonitis associated with rotator cuff tears. And that's what makes up this constellation called impingement syndrome. So if we truly believe someone has impingement syndrome with a cuff tear, they're the candidates for surgery when they fail medical management.
So what do you do?
The surgical treatment for rotator cuff tears has evolved full circle. It used to be 15 years ago all open. You'd get the big incision on the shoulder, the whole deltoid muscle would have to be taken down, and that's the big muscle that allows you to elevate your shoulder. So that was a pretty morbid operation, a lot of complications with that, a lot of pain. Well, that's been supplanted by the arthroscopic techniques today, and I think that the majority of cuff tears today can be managed with arthroscopic techniques. So the open techniques are reserved for some of the more complicated tears.
And the arthroscopic is just when you go in with the portal and the camera and another hole to do all the work with.
Yes, and the arthroscopic technique usually involves a bunch of those little portals. So it's a lot of small incisions. And if you added it all up, it probably adds up to the same amount of incision you had before. But the big difference is you don't take down the deltoid muscle. Make no mistake that even though it's arthroscopic and even though it's done with small incisions, there are still complications associated with every operation. And the number one complication is going to be stiffness. So before you enter into that relationship with a patient, you have to be certain that they are well motivated. There's nothing that can be messed up more than a shoulder operation.
After the surgery, what kind of recuperative type of treatment do you propose for individuals with rotator cuff surgery?
I think most shoulder surgeons today agree that it's probably as important to participate in a formal, regimented, post-operative physical therapy course And you have to tell patients up front that if they're not committed to the therapy afterwards, they shouldn't consider the operation, again, because of all the complications associated with it. And we usually break it down into different phases. And the first phase, of course, is basically let the tissues calm down after surgery. But then shortly thereafter, based on the quality of the repair that was performed at the time of surgery, you have to institute shoulder motion. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a stiff shoulder. And usually a stiff shoulder is a painful shoulder.
Presumably, people are undergoing these surgeries, number one, to get rid of the shoulder pain. But number two, I think for those people who injure themselves at work and have this type of a situation, they want to get themselves back into the workforce. What are your recommendations to your patients with regard to getting back into the workforce after having had surgery?
Yeah, another great question, and these are the things that patients should be asking when they come in, because I don't think they realize the downtime associated with the rotator cuff operation. It takes a long time for this cuff to heal, and it can take up to half a year, 6 full months before you have enough strength in that repair to allow them to go back to their normal activities. So I think the most important thing is to let them know, to educate them up front that they have a lot of downtime and a lot of recuperation ahead of them.
Are there certain activities that you do not recommend that they engage in subsequent to having this surgery?
Well, it depends on the time frame. Certainly early on, everything is eliminated. Everything, because the most important thing, you must protect that rotator cuff repair. So if they get into something early on, even though they're having no pain, it could disrupt the repair, and then you have to go back to square one. So afterwards, if it's a good repair, it's a strong repair, and you get good tendon healing, then you really shouldn't have to restrict them in any way afterwards.
Do you do any like post-surgical MRIs to see how the repair has been done, or do you just leave it to, again, the symptoms that are being relayed to you on post-operative visits?
I think if you're getting routine MRIs post-operatively, it should be part of some kind of a experimental protocol or a research study that you're involved in. By and large, no, we do not do studies to see if indeed the rotator cuff repair is intact. It's going to be based on symptoms. And the reason is, if they're asymptomatic and you get that MRI, what are you going to do about it, knowing that up to 50% of those MRIs are going to show a recurrent tear?
And now I got a symptom that I have to take care of, and that's a commercial break, and it will be our last commercial break for our show here with Dr. Allardyce. So please join us when we return on You Be the Judge.